Inside the Zizians cult, how radical beliefs led to multiple killings. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. It started in the middle of nowhere, a small, dusty town in northern Arizona, a place where the wind carried secrets and the sunsets burned like fire across the desert. Locals called it Harmony Ridge, but there was nothing harmonious about what would soon take root there. It began with one man, Elias Zizian, tall, charismatic, quietly intense. He spoke like a prophet and moved like a shadow. No one knew exactly where he came from. Some said he was from Utah. Others whispered he'd spent years in a monastery overseas. But what everyone agreed on was this: when he spoke, people listened. Elias preached about purity, truth, and the coming storm. He said the world was ending, not in a flash of fire, but in a slow decay of souls. According to him, modern society had lost its way. Technology had poisoned minds. Governments had lied. Churches had fallen. And the only way to survive the Great Cleansing, as he called it, was to join him, to build a new community away from the corruption of the world. He called it the Zizian path. At first, it sounded harmless, a spiritual movement, a way to live simply. But as months passed, things began to change. Elias started demanding more loyalty, more sacrifice, more control. The first to follow him were people searching for peace. A single mother trying to escape her abusive husband, a veteran haunted by war, a college dropout lost in addiction. They all found comfort in Elias's words. He promised safety, belonging, family. He rented land outside of town, 40 acres of barren desert. There, his followers built what he called the sanctuary, a collection of handmade cabins and a large wooden hall at the center, painted pure white. No cell phones, no television, no outside contact. They lived off the land, growing crops, raising animals, and studying Elias's teachings, which he wrote in a black leather journal known as the Doctrine of Light. Every night, followers gathered inside the hall. Elias stood before them, lit by candlelight, his voice echoing off the wooden walls. He told them they were chosen, that the outside world was dying, but they, the Zizians, would survive. He said the universe had spoken to him, that he had seen visions of a new dawn, a world purified by fire, and the people believed him. By the second year, there were more than 60 members living in the compound. Children played barefoot in the dirt. Women sewed white robes by hand. Men built fences and prayed at sunrise. From the outside, it looked like a peaceful community. But inside, darkness was growing. Elias started dividing the group into tiers. The pure, those closest to him, were said to have achieved spiritual enlightenment. The unready, the rest, were told to serve, obey, and repent until they were deemed worthy. He introduced punishments. Anyone who disobeyed rules, even minor ones, faced public humiliation. They were made to kneel before the group, confess their sins, and beg forgiveness. Some were locked in small wooden sheds for hours in the desert heat. Others were denied food, and still, they stayed, because Elias had a way of making cruelty sound like compassion. He said pain cleansed the soul. He said suffering was love. One woman, Lena Hart, remembered the first time she met him. She was 26, recently divorced, lonely. She'd met Elias at a local farmer's market. He smiled, offered her homemade bread, and told her she had a radiant spirit. That was how it always began, with kindness. Within weeks, Lena sold everything she owned and moved into the sanctuary. First, she said it felt like heaven. No noise, no bills, no stress. Just people helping each other, praying, and believing they were building something good. But one night changed everything. It was late summer. The moon hung heavy and red. Elias called everyone to the hall. Every man, woman, and child. They gathered in silence, the air thick with incense and fear. Elias walked to the center, barefoot, his robe glowing white under the flickering candles. He said the time had come for the trial of purity. He told them one among them had sinned, that someone had lied, and that the community must be cleansed. He pointed to a man in the crowd, Mark Taylor, a 34-year-old mechanic who joined 6 months earlier. Elias accused him of breaking the covenant of silence. Mark had been caught sneaking letters to his sister in town, begging her to come get him. The room went still. Mark dropped to his knees, shaking. Elias placed a hand on his head and whispered words no one could hear. Then he looked at his followers and said, "The weak will not survive the new world." 2 of Elias's guards, known as the Brothers of Flame, dragged Mark outside. The crowd followed. Torches lit the desert. Elias ordered Mark to face the cleansing fire. Mark screamed, begged, but no one moved. They said it was purification, but Lena called it what it was: murder. They burned him alive. And when it was over, Elias made them all kneel in the dirt and promised to never speak of it again. That was the night the Zizians stopped being a community. They became something else, something darker, something dangerous. In town, people started to notice strange things. Zizian members came in groups, always silent, always polite, but never alone. They bought huge amounts of gasoline, medical supplies, and ammunition. No one questioned it at first. The sheriff said they were weird but harmless. But when a local teenager named Brittany Cole vanished after attending one of their open, spiritual gatherings, rumors started spreading fast. Her car was found abandoned 3 miles from the sanctuary gate. Inside were her purse, her shoes, and a note that read, "They said I'd finally belong." Her parents begged police to search the compound. But without evidence, the warrant was denied. That was the first disappearance. There would be more. As Elias's influence grew, so did his paranoia. He started preaching that outsiders were agents of the old world. He said the government would soon attack them for their truth. So he built an armory. He made every member train with rifles. He said they were soldiers of light. Lena tried to leave once. She told Elias she was sick and wanted to see her mother. He smiled, hugged her, and said she could go. After one last ceremony. That ceremony lasted 3 days. No food, no water, no sleep. By the end, Lena collapsed from exhaustion. When she woke up, she was locked in a small wooden room, her arms bound, her voice hoarse from crying. Outside, she could hear chanting, the sound of drums, and Elias whispering, "Fear is the final lie you must burn." Weeks later, a fire broke out on the edge of the sanctuary. It destroyed 2 cabins. Elias called it a sign. He said the cleansing had begun. He told his followers that the outside world would fall within a year, that the government would collapse, that the chosen few must prepare for ascension. But not everyone believed him anymore. Some whispered that Elias had changed, that the visions were gone, that the voice of the universe he claimed to hear had turned into the sound of madness. And then came the killings. 3 members disappeared in a single night. Elias said they betrayed the light. But Lena heard screams that night, far from the hall, near the old well behind the compound. By morning, the ground had been disturbed. Fresh dirt. No explanation. She knew then that she had to escape. But leaving the Zizians wasn't just dangerous, it was a death sentence. The desert was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the kind that pressed against your chest until breathing felt like a sin. The moon hung low over the sanctuary, casting long shadows across the white hall. Inside, 50 people slept on the floor, bodies wrapped in thin blankets, faces calm, dreams controlled. And among them, one woman lay awake, eyes open, heart pounding. Lena Hart. She had stopped believing months ago, stopped praying, stopped smiling. But she kept pretending, because in the Zizians, pretending was survival. That night, she wasn't praying to God. She was praying for a way out. 2 weeks had passed since the disappearances. 3 members gone. No explanation. Elias called it spiritual elevation. But Lena knew what she'd heard that night. The screams, the digging, the chanting that went on until dawn. She hadn't told anyone what she knew. Not even Aaron Blake, the young carpenter she'd grown close to, one of the few who still questioned things. Elias forbade romantic relationships, saying love distracted from the divine mission. But loneliness breaks rules. And in whispers, Lena and Aaron had found each other. One night after curfew, they met behind the animal shed. Aaron had been part of the inner circle once, trusted, respected, until he started asking questions. Now he was being watched. Everyone was. That night, his hands trembled as he whispered to her, "He's losing control, Lena. He's paranoid. He's planning something big. I heard the brothers say he wants to seal the covenant." She didn't understand. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen before. Pure terror. "If we don't leave soon," he said, "we won't get another chance." Lena waited 3 more days. She pretended to pray. She smiled when told to. She repeated Elias's mantras out loud. But inside, she was breaking. The morning of purity was approaching. A ritual Elias claimed would cleanse the unfaithful. No one knew what it meant, but whispers spread fast. Some said it would be a sacrifice. Others said it would be a massacre. And in the middle of it all, Elias stood before them, preaching like a god. He told them the old world had already collapsed, that the government had fallen, that soldiers were on their way to destroy the sanctuary, and only true believers would survive. They believed him. They always did. The night before the ceremony, Elias summoned Lena to his quarters. A rare thing. The only light came from a single candle flickering beside him. The walls were covered with symbols, circles, eyes, and strange markings that looked burned into the wood. He smiled when she entered. "You've been quiet lately." Her throat went dry. "I've been reflecting." "Good," he said softly. "Reflection purifies the soul." He stepped closer. His hand brushed her cheek. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I see doubt in you, Lena. Doubt is a disease. But don't worry. I can burn it out." He leaned in, his eyes glowing in the candlelight. "Tomorrow you'll be reborn." And she knew then, if she stayed, she'd die. That night, Lena found Aaron again. They didn't speak. They just looked at each other, the same fear, the same decision. At midnight, when everyone was asleep, they crept toward the fence. The desert stretched endlessly beyond it. 20 miles of sand and silence to the nearest road. But anything was better than staying. Aaron had stolen a key from the tool shed earlier that day. The lock clicked open. The metal groaned. Then a sound. Footsteps. Voices. They froze. A flashlight beam sliced through the darkness. "Who's there?" A voice called. "Show yourselves." It was one of the brothers of flame. Aaron grabbed Lena's hand. "Run." They sprinted into the desert. Behind them, shouts erupted. Dogs barked. Gunfire cracked through the night. The sand was soft, their breath sharp. They didn't look back, just kept running. Lena's legs burned. Her lungs screamed, but she could hear the dogs getting closer. Aaron turned, shouting, "Go! Don't stop!" He pushed her forward, and then she heard a single gunshot. The sound echoed like thunder across the dunes. She turned. Aaron was on the ground, a dark stain spreading across his shirt. The guards were closing in. Lena fell beside him, shaking, screaming his name. He grabbed her wrist, his voice barely a whisper. "Get out! Tell them! Tell them what he did." She didn't have time to say goodbye. 2 guards were already lifting their rifles. She ran, blind, desperate, into the desert night. By morning, she had collapsed near the highway. A truck driver spotted her, barefoot, covered in sand, eyes wild with fear. He pulled over, helped her into the cab, and drove her straight to the sheriff's office in Prescott County. Her first words were barely audible. "They're killing people out there." Sheriff David Hollins didn't believe her at first. He'd heard the rumors, sure. Everyone had. But he also knew the Zizians had lawyers, donations, and enough loyal followers to scare off anyone who asked questions. When he called for a welfare check, the compound refused entry. Elias claimed Lena was a mentally unstable outsider who'd been excommunicated for blasphemy. But Hollins couldn't ignore her condition. Dehydrated, malnourished, bruises on her wrists, rope burns on her ankles. He contacted the FBI. 2 days later, Special Agent Clara Morris arrived. a veteran of cult investigations. She'd seen things like this before. Waco, Jonestown. But something about this case felt different, darker. When she first met Lena, the young woman barely spoke. Her hands shook. Her eyes darted toward the windows as if Elias could appear at any moment. Clara leaned forward gently. "You're safe now, Lena, but I need you to tell me what really happened inside." Lena hesitated, then whispered, "He said he was saving us, but he was killing us." The more Lena spoke, the worse it got. She described punishments that lasted days. Children forced to fast for purification. Women made to confess sins of the flesh before the entire congregation. The Brothers of Flame carrying out executions under Elias's orders, calling it ascension. Clara listened, horrified, and then Lena said something that made her blood run cold. "There's going to be another ritual. He said the world ends on the next full moon. That's 5 days from now." The FBI knew they couldn't wait. But getting a warrant to raid the sanctuary wasn't easy. The Zizians had registered as a religious organization. They owned the land legally, and every time law enforcement tried to step in, Elias's lawyers blocked it. Still, Clara pushed. She brought in satellite images showing suspicious graves behind the compound, thermal scans that revealed underground tunnels, and a report from Lena detailing the trial of purity, the night Mark Taylor was burned alive. Finally, a federal judge signed the warrant. Operation Morning Light was born. The plan was simple: raid the sanctuary before dawn, arrest Elias, and extract all survivors safely. But nothing about the Zizians was ever simple. On the morning of the raid, the desert sky was gray and heavy. 20 vehicles approached the compound in silence. FBI, SWAT, and local deputies. They cut their headlights as they neared the fence. At 4:42 a.m., Clara gave the signal. "Move in." The first vehicle rammed through the gate. Officers stormed in, shouting orders. "Federal agents, get on the ground." But what they found inside stopped them cold. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The morning news rolled through every American home like a slow-motion nightmare. Desert cult mass suicide, 17 dead. Elias Zizian, prophet of fire, missing. The headlines played on repeat. But the story was far from over. Agent Clara Morris sat in her hotel room, staring at the photographs spread across her bed. The aerial shots, the tunnels, the bodies lined up under white sheets, and in the corner of every image, that same red symbol. A circle, an eye, painted, carved, or burned. It wasn't random. It was a message. The media called it closure. But Clara didn't believe in neat endings. She'd seen this before, the way cults never really died. They just changed names, new faces, same fire. She picked up her phone and dialed Lena Hart. Lena's voice trembled. "I told you he's not dead." Clara exhaled. "You don't know that." "I do," Lena whispered. "You didn't see how careful he was. He used doubles. He planned for everything." Clara had heard the rumors that Elias used his followers as mirrors. Men who dressed like him, spoke like him, moved like him. It was part of the illusion. If one died, the others would think he'd risen again. Lena continued. "He always said, if the fire goes out in one place, it must rise in another." That wasn't a metaphor. That was instruction. 3 weeks later, the fire rose again. It started small. A house fire in Flagstaff, killing a couple and their teenage son. The fire marshal called it accidental. But the sheriff who arrived on scene noticed something strange. A circle burned into the living room floor, and written beside it, in soot, "The light is coming." When Clara saw the photos, her heart froze. The handwriting matched the walls of the sanctuary. The Bureau reopened the case under a new file name, Operation Emberfall. Every pattern pointed to the same conclusion: someone was reviving the Zizians. A survivor or Elias himself. Lena was relocated again, this time to a federal safe house outside Phoenix. She lived under an alias, working nights at a diner. She never told anyone her past. But sometimes, When customers left tips shaped like small folded circles, she'd find her hands shaking uncontrollably. The first one she ignored. The second she turned over to Clara. The third came with a note. "You ran, Sister Lena, but you can't hide from the light." That was when Clara decided to go back, to where it all began. The sanctuary had been sealed off after the investigation, but she got clearance to walk the site again. The desert air was heavy, like it remembered. The compound looked almost peaceful now. Ashes scattered across the sand. The old chapel half buried by wind. But when she stepped inside, her flashlight caught something new. Footprints. Fresh ones. They led straight to the tunnel entrance. The air inside was colder than she remembered. Each breath echoed off the stone walls. Her light caught old words scrawled in black paint. "The pure shall return." And then a sound. Faint. A shuffle. She turned sharply, gun drawn. "FBI! Who's there?" A shape moved in the darkness. Then a voice, hoarse, trembling. "Please don't shoot." It was a boy, no older than 17. Thin, pale, dressed in a filthy white robe. Clara lowered her weapon slowly. "You're alive." He nodded weakly. "We were waiting. He said you'd come." The boy's name was Noah Quinn. He'd been born inside the sanctuary. Never went to school. Never saw a city. To him, the desert was the world. He told Clara he'd been hiding in the tunnels for weeks after the fire. He said Elias hadn't died. He'd left before it happened. That he'd promised to return for the chosen. He told us the others were sacrificed for the light. He said the impure would burn so the faithful could rise. Clara asked, "Where did he go?" The boy's lips trembled. "North, to the mountains, to build the new flame." The FBI moved quickly. They traced sightings, reports of a bearded man preaching in small towns across Arizona and New Mexico. He used a new name, Brother Eli. No one made the connection, not yet. He told followers the government lied about the fire, that the real Zizians had survived, that the world would soon cleanse itself of darkness. People listened. Some laughed, but others, the lonely, the broken, they followed. Within months, a new commune had formed in the hills near Silver Creek. Locals called it Eli's Camp. Just a handful of cabins at first. But then, the disappearances began again. Clara and her partner, Agent Miguel Torres, went undercover as documentary filmmakers investigating New Age communes. They approached the camp at sunset, carrying cameras and fake press badges. A woman greeted them, smiling, calm, her eyes glassy. She introduced herself as Sister Faith. "Brother Eli doesn't grant interviews," she said, "but he welcomes all who seek truth." Her voice was soft, but rehearsed, the kind of tone that hides rules behind kindness. As they walked through the camp, Clara noticed details that made her stomach twist. The symbols carved into wood posts, the white robes hanging on lines, and a massive fire pit at the center of the clearing, surrounded by stones painted red. They weren't just living here, they were preparing for something. That night, under the pretense of filming ritual traditions, Clara and Torres stayed for a service. Dozens of followers gathered in silence as the torches were lit. And then he appeared, Brother Eli, older now, bearded, but unmistakable. Elias Zizian, the same voice, the same eyes, the same quiet authority that could bend a room. "Brothers and sisters," he said, arms outstretched. "The fire was never meant to end. The weak burned, but the strong remain. You are the second light." The crowd murmured, weeping with joy. Clara's heartbeat thundered in her chest. They had him, right there, but there were no backup agents within 5 miles. And if she made a move too soon, they'd both disappear into the desert, just like the last people who tried. So she waited. She watched, listened, recorded, and what she saw that night would haunt her forever. They brought out a young man, maybe 20. He was tied to a post beside the fire pit. Elias placed his hand on his head. "This soul has doubted, but doubt is a door. Through fire he will see the truth." The followers began to chant, soft at first, then louder. "Light through pain, light through pain." Elias lifted a torch, and before Clara could move, before Torres could speak, he touched it to the boy's feet. The screams pierced the night. Clara lunged forward, shouting, "FBI! Drop it!" Panic erupted. Followers scattered. Torches fell, fire spreading fast. Elias turned toward her, calm, almost smiling. "You came too soon, Agent." He dropped the torch and vanished into the chaos. The raid that followed was one of the largest in Arizona's history. FBI, ATF, local police, they surrounded Silver Creek by dawn. 35 followers were detained, for were found dead in the fire pit. And Elias? Gone. Again. The tunnels beneath the camp led straight into the mountain. Search teams went in. They found storage, food, weapons, gasoline, and more writings. Hundreds of pages, all in his handwriting. Each one dated and signed. But the latest entry was only a week old. It read, "The new world begins when the flame reaches the cities. The faithful are already there. Watch the streets. The light will walk among you." The story exploded nationwide. News anchors called it the cult that wouldn't die. Talk shows debated whether Elias was a madman or a messiah. YouTube channels dissected every detail. The night began with whispers and ended with screams. It was October 19th, 2016, the night the Zizians called the Purge of Light. In the woods outside of Bridgewater, 100 followers gathered. They wore white linen robes tied with red cords. Their faces were painted with ash, a symbol of cleansing the flesh. At the front stood Prophet Zain Zizian, his silver hair glowing in the moonlight. In his hands, a worn Bible, pages torn, marked with his own handwritten scripture. He raised it high, and the crowd fell to their knees. "Tonight," he said, his voice low, rhythmic, hypnotic, "we purge the unclean. We burn the sins that poison the body. The world outside mocks the light, but we are chosen." They repeated after him, their voices trembling. "We are chosen." Drums started, slow, primal beats echoing through the trees. Candles flickered, forming a rough circle around a wooden altar. On it lay a lamb, its bleating barely audible under the chants. Zane's eyes darted to the edge of the crowd, where Alara, his daughter, stood frozen. She'd seen these rituals before, but tonight felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, a tension that smelled of blood and fear. He motioned for her to come closer. "Bring the blade," he ordered. She hesitated. The blade, the cleansing knife, was forged from old metal, engraved with strange symbols. It had taken lives before. Her hands shook as she approached. "Father," she whispered, "we don't have to." Zane silenced her with a glare that could freeze bone. "Faith demands sacrifice, Alara. Do you doubt the light?" The crowd murmured. Eyes turned. Doubt was sin. Doubt was death. Alara swallowed hard and handed him the knife. The lamb bleated once more. Then silence. Blood pooled across the altar. The crowd gasped as Zane lifted his hands, crimson dripping onto his robes. "The light accepts this gift," he shouted. "We are cleansed. The darkness burns away." The drums grew faster, the chanting louder, and then something unplanned happened. From the back of the crowd, Jonas Hale, one of Zane's newest recruits, stumbled forward. He was pale, shaking, tears streaking his face. "I can't do this anymore," he screamed. "You're insane. This isn't God. This is murder." A hush. All eyes turned to him. Zane's smile didn't fade. He simply raised his hand. "Brother Hale," he said softly, "you question the light?" Jonas looked around wildly. "You're all brainwashed. He's lying to you. You're just feeding his delusion." The crowd gasped, and in seconds they turned on him. Hands grabbed his arms, dragging him toward the altar. He kicked, screamed, begged. Alara froze. Her father's eyes gleamed. "The light has chosen its offering," Zane declared. Jonas screamed louder now, his words drowned by the chants. "Purify the flesh. Purify the soul." Alara turned away as her father raised the blade again. When the screams stopped, she dared to look and saw the blood staining the earth. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't purification. It was execution. But in the cult's eyes, it was holy. The next morning, the woods were silent again. Only ashes remained where the altar had stood. The followers moved like ghosts, cleaning, burning remnants, burying the evidence beneath layers of dirt and denial. Zane stood at the center, calm, almost serene. Alara watched him from afar, clutching her mother's old necklace. A tiny silver cross, hidden from him for years. She whispered a prayer, not for salvation, for courage, because she knew what came next. That evening, Alara found herself summoned to her father's quarters, a small cabin deep in the woods, filled with relics of his visions, paintings of angels with hollow eyes, jars of animal bones labeled with names of sinners, a wall covered in newspaper clippings of disasters, hurricanes, shootings, floods, each marked as divine proof. Zane sat by the window, writing in his book of light. He didn't look up. "Alara," he said, his voice calm, almost gentle. "You hesitated tonight." Her throat tightened. It wasn't hesitation. It was fear. Fear is the enemy of faith. He turned to her now, his eyes cold. "Do you want to be cast out?" She stayed quiet. He rose, walking closer. "You're my blood, my air. The world will burn soon, and you will lead what's left. But if your heart is weak," he touched her cheek softly, too softly, "then the light will consume you." Alara forced a nod, pretending obedience. "Yes, Father." He smiled again. "Good. Tomorrow we cleanse again." That night, Alara couldn't sleep. She sat outside her cabin, watching the stars blink through the tree canopy. Jonas's face haunted her. His screams, his eyes. This had gone too far. She thought of the outside world, cars, people, laughter. A world she hadn't seen in years. Could she still escape? Her breath caught when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw Liam, one of the guards. Young, kind. He'd been born into the cult like her. He knelt beside her. "You shouldn't be out here." "I can't sleep," she whispered. Liam hesitated, then lowered his voice. "You saw what happened. It's not right. He's losing control." Her eyes widened. "You think that too?" He nodded. "Half of us do, but no one dares speak. If he finds out." They both fell silent. The woods buzzed with cicadas. Then Alara said it, the words that could kill her if overheard. "I'm leaving." Liam stared at her, stunned. "You can't. There are guards. Traps. If you try." "I don't care. I'll die out there before I live another day here." He looked away, his jaw clenched. Then he whispered, "There's an old path behind the western ridge. My uncle used to use it before Zane fenced it off. I'll distract the patrol if you're serious." She reached for his hand. "Thank you." But Liam didn't smile. "Don't thank me yet. If he catches us, he'll make us the next offering." The next day, the camp buzzed with preparation for another cleansing. This one would be larger, 40 members, all sworn to offer themselves in spirit. Zane walked through the camp like a general inspecting soldiers. His followers bowed, whispering his name as he passed. Alara played her part, quiet, obedient, hiding her terror behind a mask. She met Liam's eyes only once, across the clearing. A nod. The signal was set. At dusk, the ritual began again. Candles lit the forest, and the crowd gathered. Zane preached from his altar, voice booming, sweat glistening on his skin. "The time of shadow ends. The light consumes all sin." Alara slipped away during the chanting. Her heart pounded. The woods seemed endless. She reached the western ridge, found the old fence half-collapsed under vines. Behind her, voices, footsteps. She didn't look back. Branches tore her clothes. Her breath came in gasps. The woods were darker now, moonless, but she kept going. Then, a hand grabbed her wrist. She screamed until she saw Liam's face. "Shoo! Guards are close," he hissed. They ran together, weaving through the trees. In the distance, faint shouts echoed. Torches flickered. They made it to the clearing, where an old truck sat rusting under the trees. Something Zane had banned years ago. Liam jumped in, hot-wired it, praying the engine would start. It roared to life too loud. "Go!" Alara shouted. They tore down the dirt path, headlights off, bouncing over roots and rocks. Behind them, shadows emerged, torches in pursuit. Bullets cracked the night. Glass shattered. Liam ducked. "Hold on." It started with a whisper and ended in fire. By November 2016, Bridgewater felt different. The woods were quieter. The birds didn't sing near the old camp anymore. Locals said they heard chants at night. Others said it was just the wind. But something was changing, and this time the outside world was beginning to notice. 2 hikers had stumbled upon the wrecked truck by the canal. Inside was the body of Liam Carson, age 22, a known member of the Zizians. His neck had been broken, and yet what haunted investigators wasn't just the body, it was the footprints. A second set, smaller, barefoot, leading away from the crash and into the trees. No return prints. The girl's tracks vanished just a few hundred feet in. The police report said it plainly, possibly another passenger. Status unknown. That unknown would soon shake the entire town. Detective Maria Sutton stared at the photo on her desk. The wreck, the footprints, the woods. Something about it felt off. She'd been tracking cult movements for years, knew the patterns, the disappearances, and the name Zizian had come up before, whispered in forums, old court filings, missing persons databases, always dismissed as rumor. But now she had proof a body was tied to them. Maria clicked on an old digital file. A missing girl, 17 years old, vanished in 2009. Name, Alara Zizian. She stared at the photo, the girl's sad smile, her haunted eyes, and whispered, "What did your father do to you?" Back in the woods, the Zizians were unraveling. The prophet was losing control. Half his followers had fled after the purge of light. Some took their children and never looked back. Others vanished into the wilderness, too afraid to speak. The rest stayed, the most loyal, the most broken. They believed Alara's escape was a test. Zane told them she had been taken by the darkness, that she had betrayed the light. He preached longer now, ranted louder, slept less. His eyes were wild, his words strange. Even his most devoted followers began to whisper, "The prophet is slipping." Still, he kept them busy, digging trenches, burning records, rewriting scripture. He said a storm was coming. The cleansing storm. No one knew he was right. Detective Sutton and her partner, Agent Frank Reddick, drove out to Bridgewater 2 weeks after the crash. They followed a lead from a woman who'd once escaped the cult years earlier, Carla James, now living under a new name. Carla's hands shook as she spoke. "He's still out there, isn't he?" Maria nodded. "We believe so. Can you tell us where?" Carla hesitated. "The camp's deep in the woods, near the old mill. But he moves it sometimes. Says the government's watching." Frank scribbled notes. "Do you think he's dangerous?" Carla looked up, eyes hollow. "He's more than dangerous. He believes he's God." That night, rain pounded the forest. Inside his cabin, Zane Zizian stood before the altar. His robe was stained. His hands trembled. He hadn't eaten in days. The visions were coming faster now. Flashing lights, voices in the thunder. He whispered to himself, "They're coming for me, the unbelievers." He looked up at the ceiling. "You'll protect me, won't you?" No answer. Only the sound of rain on the roof. He slammed his fist on the altar. "Answer me." Silence. Then, faintly, a sound outside. Footsteps. He turned, knife in hand. The door creaked open, and there she was, soaked, pale, barefoot. Alara. For a moment, time stopped. Zane dropped the knife. His lips parted. "You came back," he whispered. "The light brought you home." Alara's eyes were hollow now. The forest had taken something from her. But she wasn't afraid anymore. "No," she said quietly. "I came to end this." He smiled. "End? There's no end. There's only rebirth." He stepped closer. She flinched but held her ground. "You tried to flee," he said softly. "And yet the light returned you. It always does. Because you are chosen, Elara. Her jaw tightened. You killed Liam. He blinked. The boy? He tried to steal my daughter from me. You murdered him. His voice rose sharp and angry. I saved you. The world outside would have devoured you. They twist minds. They poison souls. I gave you purpose. Elara's hands shook, but her voice didn't. You gave me nightmares. He froze. Something flickered behind his eyes. A flash of guilt, gone as quickly as it came. You don't understand, child. Everything I did was for the light. No, she said. Everything you did was for control. Before he could answer, a loudspeaker crackled through the trees. This is the FBI. Step out of your cabin with your hands up. Zane's eyes went wide. He rushed to the window. Flashing red and blue lights cut through the trees. Helicopters thundered overhead. His world was collapsing. He turned back to Elara. You betrayed me, he hissed. Elara took a slow step backward. I told them where you were. For the first time, Zane looked old. Small. Human. He reached for the altar, pulled out a vial of gasoline and a matchbox. If they take me, they take nothing. Dad, don't. He struck the match. The room erupted in orange light. Elara screamed, lunging for the door as flames licked the walls. Outside, agents shouted commands. Gunfire cracked. Glass shattered. She stumbled out, coughing, gasping, collapsing in the mud. Behind her, the cabin exploded. The blast shook the trees. Fire tore through the camp, consuming tents, relics, everything the Zizians had built. Elara watched it burn. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid. The official report would later call it the Bridgewater cult fire. 17 dead, 6 survivors. Among the remains, an unrecognizable male body, presumed to be Zane Zizian. No positive DNA confirmation. For years, rumors persisted. That he'd escaped. That he was planning to rebuild. But to Elara, it didn't matter. The light was dead. 3 years later, Elara sat in a small diner outside New Orleans, working under a new name. The world moved on, people laughed, lived, forgot. But she never forgot. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flames, heard the chants, felt his hand on her shoulder, whispering about salvation. Sometimes she'd catch herself staring at strangers, wondering if they were like her once, lost, searching, easy to break. One day, a journalist found her. He introduced himself politely, said he was doing a piece on the cult survivors. She listened, sipped her coffee. When he asked what she remembered most, she didn't hesitate. The silence after the fire, she said. It was the first time I realized what peace sounded like. He nodded slowly. And your father? She looked out the window. If he's alive, he'll find another name, another way. People like him always do. The journalist frowned. Do you think he'll come for you? She smiled faintly. Let him try. Later that night, she walked home under flickering streetlights. The world was quiet, except for the hum of cars in the distance. As she reached her apartment, something caught her eye. A small envelope taped to her door. No return address. Inside, a single piece of paper. And one line written in red ink. The light never dies. Her hands trembled. The streetlight above her flickered once. And somewhere in the dark, a man watched. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.